everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is 2019, and we are still back on our bullshit. It is me and Nate. Nate, how are things going in the south of England?
The south of England is wonderful. It's mild. It's dark all the time, but it's getting brighter every day. We get like 2 or 3 more minutes of daylight now that we're off that. Basically, if you've ever played Castlevania 2: Simon's Quest, you know the part where it turns into nighttime and it says, "What a horrible night to have a curse," and everywhere you go, there's like zombies everywhere. That basically happens every year in England, but if I remember correctly, in Castlevania, when the night ends, it says the morning sun has vanquished the awful night. That is coming. That's going to happen sometime soon. Not too long from now, it'll be more daylight than dark, and I'm just so looking forward to it.
Yep. The only thing that keeps the seasonal affective disorder away from me during January and February, because they are the two most bullshit months ever. There's nothing that happens in them. They're cold, they're dark, they're hateful, but I see a little bit more daylight every day. And then comes March, and then like March is the full push into spring and back away from this horrible, horrible world. Next weekend, I'm going to be in LA, where I looked at the weather and I was just like, it's 70 degrees in LA. That is unfair.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, that's like top, oh, it's a high of 70 degrees in January in LA. Now, of course, you do have to breathe in like a massive amount of green smog, and it costs like literally a testicle to live there, but it's warm. So,
are you going to LA for work, or are you going to LA for Disney?
Well, look, my wife sells Disney trips, so isn't it always both? But no,
fair point.
We're going for my wife's other business. They have a once a year meeting in Anaheim, and then we go to Disneyland too. So I'm going to be there, and it's going to be me and the kid in a rental car, and she's going to be doing her stuff for her job, and then I'm going to be out and about in LA, wandering, hoping to.
So
maybe this time I'll eat an In-N-Out burger. I still have yet to eat an In-N-Out, and I've been to LA like 3 times.
So can I tell you my Los Angeles story?
Sure.
I've been to LA 3 times. Once as a small child, like 4 years old, and then twice when I was in the Army. When I was 4, I actually got lost at Disneyland, and you can imagine losing a 4-year-old at Disneyland in 1988. That was probably not a fun experience for my mom. But I went to LA in 2011 because I was doing a military exercise in Australia, and one of our soldiers he didn't burn in on the jump, but he landed hard and broke his back, and he had to have surgery in Australia in an Australian hospital. And then he had to get medically transported, but the Army and TRICARE, this is kind of funny. They could have, I feel like it just, in terms of common sense, it would have made more sense to just fly the guy on a military medical aircraft from Australia to Hawaii, where there's a military hospital, and then they can move him back to Alaska. But they looked at the numbers and they're like, it costs way more money to fly a military medical plane down for one person. We can't justify this. So instead, they just bought us first class tickets all the way back from Australia to Alaska. And every time there was a flight, there was then an overnight stay. So we flew one hour or so from Rockhampton to Brisbane. We stayed overnight. Then we flew 14 hours from Brisbane to Los Angeles, stayed overnight, and then we flew, I think it's 5 or 6 hours from Los Angeles to Alaska. So anyway, we land in LA, and if I remember correctly, we land at like, I don't know, it was probably like 9 a.m., 8 a.m. or something. We get through U.S. Customs, and then we get in our hotel room, and we don't have to fly until like the next morning. So I've got this whole free-ass day in Los Angeles. And my soldier is Puerto Rican, right? And I asked him, because he was just not doing super hot, and he hated the food in Australia. And like, I was just like, what can I get you, just to like make you feel better? And he's like, if anyone has Puerto Rican food, my God, could I just please have something that I can eat? And so I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, dude. So he like takes some of his meds and he like goes to sleep because he's racked out. I find a Puerto Rican restaurant in North Hollywood, and this is like pre-advanced internet food ordering, but I order online and I get a call from them like, yeah, they're like, when are you going to come pick it up? And I was like, oh yeah, I'll be there in like 45 minutes. Now, mind you, I'm in Inglewood, where our hotel is, in like South LA, near the airport. They're in North Hollywood. And me being a dumbass, I'm like, oh yeah, 45 minutes. Anyway, They call me 3 times asking about when I'm coming to pick up the food because like it took me like 3.5 hours to drive on 405 from Inglewood to North Hollywood, and I get it. And I'm there. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I need to get this. I was just picking this up for a friend. And the girl at the counter, I mean, she's very, very nice. But Francis, you know what I look like. And I'm wearing like jeans and a t-shirt. And she's like, oh, you just get a PR food fix. Like, are you Puerto Rican? And I'm like, ma'am, no one has ever asked me that question for obvious reasons. And anyway, so I get my food, I get back. So by the time I realize I spent something along the lines of like 4.5 to 5 hours total. On the way back, I managed to find a sort of cut around to avoid that, just because you get on 405 and it's just standstill. And so it's just weird to me because I'm like, wow, Los Angeles would be amazing, like if you never have to go more than a few blocks from anywhere you ever like live or work. Otherwise, yeah, this place is kind of shitty. I still hold to that opinion.
Well, I do say like it's like when I go visit Chicago, I don't actually go into Chicago proper. When I go visit LA, I'm not actually going to LA. I'm flying into Anaheim, and then like I'll go to Long Beach to hang out with people, but I don't actually go into LA unless like I have to fly in and out of LAX. And like generally, what I try to do is if I have to, I fly into John Wayne, which is the Anaheim one. But
yeah, I was gonna say because you're gonna be in Orange County. I mean, I just remember flying into Ontario years ago to go to NTC, and like everywhere around you is just beautiful open desert skyline, except the direction of Los Angeles, which is just like this black wall of smog.
Oh my god!
Like, that's where the city's at.
And that's the thing. Like last time I was in California, I was just like, this is a really beautiful place. And my wife and I both like we work at home, so like we don't have to live in St. Louis. We can live anywhere that has high speed internet. And it's like, man, it would be really awesome to like live somewhere where it's kind of bigger and it's a little bit more diverse. And then, like, you fly out and you come above the green cloud that is Los Angeles, and you're just like, I would die, like, at the age of 65 living here, like, of coal miners, like, lung or something. Get the fucking black lung living in this shithole. So, sorry, LA, I'm going to stay in St. Louis where shit is still affordable to me, at least.
So, yeah, hell yeah, this is now the Where to Live in America dad chat, where we talk about how cities are actually bad. Meanwhile, I live in the biggest city in Europe, but hey, who's counting?
Hey, it's not gonna. Well, I guess it'll still be Europe after Brexit, but it won't be the biggest one in the EU anymore.
I mean, all the flushed face looking dads down in the fucking diner are probably excited by the idea that we can somehow separate Britain from Europe. But my argument is, if Iceland is technically in Europe, then so is the United Kingdom. Like, it's only 30 miles off the coast of France.
I mean, let's be honest,
it's Europe.
England used to own it all, so I mean, might as well. England gets to claim whoever it wants to be. If England wants to be Asian, I guess England gets to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are a lot of people who are probably wondering why there's still white English speaking cops in the Hong Kong police constabulary, and because exactly that. But yeah, it's just another beautiful winter day out here, yelling about politics, yelling about American political campaigns for the presidency already apparently starting, and people already saying dumb shit about things like, I don't know, Julian Castro, Kamala Harris, whomever.
Julian Castro gets my vote immediately because he is like a machine learning AI that is just like trying to be the most like centrist lib ever, and I love it. Like his saying things that say nothing are fantastic.
A lot of people that I've talked to who have encountered the Castros, him and his brother, it seems to be that they were surprised that they didn't figure more heavily in the Democratic Party, considering the way 2016 went. I think that it'll be interesting to see if Julian Castro figures out that start at half the loaf and bargain your way down to 1/8 of the loaf kind of centrism is not going to cut it today. But if he is actually a machine learning AI, then maybe he will figure that out. If not, then maybe he'll just keep saying dumb brain force shit online and we'll just make fun of him. And then there's obviously the conundrum about Kamala Harris, who, I don't know, who it's weird. A lot of people go on about Kamala Harris as a cop, and actually I think she was a prosecutor, so it's kind of worse in a way. My wife and I have talked about this a lot, that if you actually want to complain about Kamala Harris, like just word association and saying that she's a cop is not really cutting it. But talking about how I think they actually passed legislation where they were looking to prosecute parents criminally for their children's truancy in schools, or when they decided not to prosecute Stephen Mnuchin's bank for very deliberate and obvious foreclosure fraud. There are so many things that just aren't going to play well. Like if you look at the current state of the debate on criminal justice in America, if you look at the current state of debate on how much free reign banks and financial institutions are given in American politics and in the American economy to just make up their own rules. She's been on the wrong side of a ton of shit. And so in a way, like attacking it from like, oh, she's a cop, to me almost seems like an oversimplification. If you're making a joke, it's one thing, but a beat cop is in a way less. I don't have phrases. A beat cop is probably more of a dick on a personal level, but less involved with the structural oppression of people than a prosecutor.
Right. A beat cop will fuck up like your day. A prosecutor will fuck up the day for like multiple people easily. Like just an entire county. A prosecutor can do that. And one of the things that we're going to talk about here, this article from in these times, women now run the military-industrial complex. And it goes back to also who did the more woman guards tweet.
I think that was it was maple cocaine.
Yeah, maple cocaine. Yeah, who said the right wing says that they want to create more death camps, and the liberals say that they want more female guards, because it's like this woke liberalism in which the best way for it's not a problem with that we're drone striking Yemeni weddings for no reason other than some shaky intel tells us that there might be like a third stringer fucking ISIS commander there. We have to make sure that the drone operator is a woman or a person of color or somebody who is a minority, because that's the walk forward that we need. That's the progressiveness that we need. And it's like you want to take that back and like, no, that's not what we need. What we need is to stop, blowing people up for no reason. But it comes back to, well, now you're being racist, you're being sexist, you're not wanting this person to be in charge because of this, that, or the other thing. It's just like such an easy fallback. And like as a white man, like it's a very easy thing to accuse a white male of, because let's be honest, a lot of times it is racism and sexism that makes a lot. This is why a lot of white men voted for Donald Trump, because they were probably racist and sexist or hated Mexicans or whatever. But you know what? There's legitimate reasons to not like Hillary Clinton, and there's absolutely legitimate reasons to not like Kamala Harris. And I posted that that the people who keep saying that Kamala Harris, if you don't vote for Kamala Harris, or if you are saying, shit against Kamala Harris, you're going to get another 8 years of Trump. I'm like, did y'all not like remember how 2016 went? Because that's what you told me then, and that's what you told me in 2018 when I was supposed to vote for Claire McCaskill. Otherwise, I'll get Josh Hawley. Let me tell you something. I voted for Hillary and I voted for McCaskill, both people who I disagree with on fundamental levels, and I still got the shitty people. So maybe just maybe y'all should put somebody up who's a little bit better. Like, and like you said about Kamala, like she's been on the wrong side of a lot of things. She's also the one who's like, her county was the one who said that we don't want to. One way or the other, they intimated that that inmate firefighters during these California wildfires are good, and we don't want to parole these people because we need them for cheap firefighter labor. And then, like, apparently Kamala came out and was just like, "Oh, I didn't know that was being said." Blah blah blah. I'm horrified that's that's not what I think. But like it just reminded me of Abu Ghraib in a way. Like who got punished at Abu Ghraib? The people we saw in the pictures, not the people in charge, because the generals, the colonels, the majors that are up, who. I'm sorry, if you didn't know that was happening, like there has to be a stop somewhere. Like fucking privates were not taking pictures of themselves hooking genitals to car batteries without an officer knowing somewhere. So there has to be a line up, and eventually, maybe if you're trying to keep the general safe, fine. But still, that general should have resigned in shame. And I feel the same way about these things. Where like if you're in charge of something, if you're the person that is like over all of these things, and you want to say, well, I didn't know these things were happening. I didn't know these things were being said. I didn't know that these thoughts were being had. Like, this is a culture that you created though. Like one way or another, you made these people think that it was okay to think that. So it still fucking falls on you.
But also, I think too that when you look at somebody like Kamala Harris, you look at somebody like Hillary Clinton, who can only pretend um, to oppose financial capital and the forces that are governing our economy that have been forever. When somebody like Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton can only very recently, because of aggressive turnaround in polling numbers, come to the realization that maybe the privatization and neoliberalization of everything is bad, it's very difficult for me to look at that person and say, I'm going to trust them and that I'm going to support them by default. And I think one of the things that really has surprised me is that there's absolutely momentum behind socialist ideas in America now because of what Trump has been doing and because of the way that Hillary Clinton failed. But I would say that whether or not this actually translates into ground level support, I'm not sure. But in terms of the kind of discourse being put forth by the representatives of the Democratic Party, by the Clinton hangers on and the apparatchiks and such, the usual suspects from 2016, there definitely seems to be a similarly intense desire to learn nothing and do the exact same thing over again. And I see that with the way people are trying to weaponize this discussion about Kamala Harris. Like, I absolutely, definitely support there being more people in positions of power who are not white straight dudes. Like, as a default, I support that. But I'm not particularly convinced when a person tries to call me or people like me a misogynist or a racist because I don't support a politician. A politician, not just a human being, a politician who is also pro endless war, pro, letting capital run everything, pro means testing, pro nonstop competition, pro neoliberalism, and they say, "Oh, well, you didn't like Hillary and you don't like Kamala Harris." Like, "Oh, I'm sure you're not misogynist. It's just politics, right?" And it's like, actually, yeah, it is politics. Like, I don't like I absolutely, one of the things I disliked about the army and the infantry was the extent to which the kind of bro culture and just like aggressively macho dumb bullshit culture was so common. Like, it weirded me out to have guys I respected, like, career army officers, dudes in their 40s, throwing around homophobic slurs like nobody's business, like it was just a thing they did, like they were still in, like they were in middle school. That bothered me. So don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to make excuses for misogyny. What I'm trying to say is, if we are going to win in any capacity, you have to win the support of people by virtue of policies that A, they believe in, and B, that they actually believe you're going to carry out.
Yeah, I feel like 2020 is going to be a real litmus test of the Democratic Party, because I'm sure that that whoever wins the nomination is going to be either Kamala Harris or Cory Booker or somebody along those lines. And the I like to say at this point, like, of course somebody would win against Trump. All you have to be is like somewhat competent. We'll see. I mean, we already saw fucking Elizabeth Warren shoot herself in the foot by taking a DNA test, which immediately, like, that should, Elizabeth Warren taking the DNA test to prove her authenticity of Native American heritage should 100% like make you not want to support her, because one, that's horribly racist, and two, she completely capitulated to Trump. Like, she's like, "Oh, well, I'll prove it. I'll prove it to you." Like, who the fuck cares? It's Trump. He's gonna say some racist bullshit to you anyway. Like, you can't win against him. He's, that's an immediate, like, you shouldn't be supporting her whatsoever. But I'm sure one of those people, one of those kinds of people, those neoliberal people who thinks that the ACA is great, and thinks that everybody who works 40 hours a week should be able to have a comfortable life. Like, fuck off. Everybody should have a comfortable life. We are the richest fucking country in the world. It's ridiculous. Nobody should be hungry here. Nobody should be have a roof over their head. It's fucking stupid. It's ridiculous. And it shouldn't base itself on work. But we're gonna get one of those people, and they're probably gonna win. and this, these socialist ideas. I don't want to say socialism because it's not true full on socialism, but democratic socialism, Norwegian socialism, if you want to put it that way. That's going to be a push, and we already see that with Ocasio Cortez, who has just no fucks to give for anybody, and is one that's just like, I'll fucking do whatever, I'll say whatever, and I don't care. We're going to do this, and I love her for it, and that's what we need. But of course, then you get these things from like politicos, like, oh well, they're trying to rein her in because she's a wildfowl, she's a firebrand, she's saying all these things that go against the Democratic Party, and it's like y'all need to listen to that because that's what everybody fucking wants. Like and like you said, there is a like we don't want to learn, we want to go back to the status quo, and a lot of like liberals that are not politicians, the voters, the Krasensteins on Twitter or whoever, all the woke neo-libs of the world are going to say, well, whoever it is, vote blue no matter who. But there's, we have to have some kind of progress. I don't want to go back to the Obama years. I want us to learn something from the Trump years. I want us to learn that, these tax cuts should not only be reversed, but more people should be paying taxes. Like if you're making $10 million more, fucking yes, you shouldn't. Who needs fucking more than $10 million a year? Fuck off. Pay your taxes.
Well, also, so something that I'm thinking too is that months ago, maybe even a year ago, I made the joke about, okay, if when we live in a socialist utopia and we have a 4-day work week, what is the day off going to be? Are we going to have Wednesday off every week, or are we going to have a 3-day weekend every week? And of course, being someone who's worked a 9 to 5 for a long time, to me, a Wednesday off is better than a 3-day weekend. But everybody, when I did a Twitter poll, put 3-day weekend, it won by a significant margin. And I made the joke, I was like, all right, Nancy Pelosi voice. Well, the people have spoken, but they're wrong, so we're not going to do what they say. I made that as a joke, but recently I've come to believe that that's actually kind of how the people in the Democratic Party think. And whether it's the aftershock of Reagan winning and just beating them so soundly in 1984, I mean, because his margin of victory was significant in 1984, significantly larger than in 1980. Or if it's Nixon winning in 72 and he was like the most unpopular president you can possibly imagine, and yet he wound up winning anyway, and the whole McGovern drama. Like, whatever it was, I honestly feel as though the Democratic Party basically has built in all these firewalls and backstops to make sure that the hotline Joshes of the world are making decisions and not the voters, not the party members. And so when you see this stuff happen, I feel like that's the thing that you got to the point of this, Francis, that like, I don't think it's enough to just vote blue, because, I mean, here's a great example of what happens when you vote blue and you don't think about it later. Did you hear the whole story with the Washington, D.C. City Council and the legislation that they passed regarding wages and tips for people who work in the hospitality industry?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They just fucking overruled a referendum that won massively. It's like, they don't know what they're talking about. Sorry. And it's like, that it's because the city council is bought and paid for by people with money, and that's what they're going to do is fuck workers over. It's the same thing. If all you do is vote blue and you think, okay, it's done, do what the party says, you wind up with, I don't know, with the fucking ACA, which sucks. Like, yeah. Is it better than nothing? Yes, but I mean,
the ACA was built by a Republican. All right, everybody. Like the ACA won because it was like fucking Romney. It was Romney. It was Romney Care or whatever. Back in the day, and now it's Obamacare because it's for everybody, and of course, nobody wanted to do it because, of course, the black Democrat president wanted to do it. But trust me, that is like the most Republican thing that you can ever do is force everybody to pay for something. Otherwise, you have to pay a penalty tax, like that, and that's what the ACA boils down to. Now, like, it's great, like you said, it's great for people who didn't have access to anything. It is certainly a good step towards something better, but you don't, like, when you're trying to step across rocks to the other side of the creek, you don't stop in the middle of the creek and be like, this is fine, I guess. My feet aren't wet, right? So why keep pushing? Why keep moving across and trying to get to the other side? This will be perfectly fine. And I'm so tired of like liberals being like, well, we have to protect this, we have to keep this. Like, no, fuck it. Like, repeal it and do Medicare for all or whatever it is that makes it so you don't have to pay money. So people don't have to, like, it always reminds me of the dude that won the lottery who won like $1 million and went to the doctor, and the doctor's like, you have stage 4 cancer. and we
Yeah.
could have caught it earlier had you been able to go to the doctor's office when you were feeling a little feeling a little funky, and then we could have removed it when it was stage 1. But and then the dude died a month later. Like, or the people who die because they can't get their diet, their insulin or anything like that. Like, that's the ACA. I'm sorry, that's the bullshit.
Well, yeah, that's either the ACA or they live in states where because of our basically they live in states where because of our awesome slave constitution, you're not able to get the ACA protections because they made it optional. And so all the Republican states were like, we're going to own Obama by not letting people get healthcare. Long story short, I live in a country now with socialized healthcare. And there are ways in which you can see it's being intentionally defunded by assholes who want to privatize it. Some of the assholes who want to privatize it have very close ties to the American Democratic Party. Also the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party too, because the Tories in Britain are basically the Democrats. And the Republicans are basically the Democratic Unionist Party. Like there aren't equivalents in a lot of ways to the insane right-wingness of the Republican Party's default in British politics, at least. I mean, it's getting there, of course, with some of the dumb shit with fucking Brexit, but that's a story for another day. But the point being, it doesn't solve everything. But what it does is it creates security that when people are ill, when people are sick, when people have issues, they know that they're not going to go bankrupt and become homeless. And in a country as completely fucked by austerity as Britain, where wage growth in this country is so bad post-crisis that it's actually the only other country in Europe with worse wage growth than the United Kingdom is Greece, that had a complete economic depression. Wage growth adjusted for inflation still hasn't reached its pre-2008 levels. Average wages haven't either. And also, the United Kingdom is massively skewed because London is such an overpaid place compared to the rest of the country. If you take out London, this country is so modest income. It's kind of insane. But because of the National Health Service, you don't see the kind of just like hellscape breakdown nightmare that you see in parts of America, like in the Rust Belt or in the Central Valley in California or in the parts of Mississippi, Alabama that are like completely cut off from the grid. You don't see those kinds of problems, even though this country's got massive, massive problems. And what you realize is it's such a lifeline to people to be able to go to the doctor whenever they need to. And yes, there's wait times. And yes, there's fuckery. And like, we're even dealing with fuckery here where certain things are available with the NHS, but like, for example, they've been so underfunded, you can't make appointments. So your choices are basically go to like this clinic and stay there all day hoping you can be seen and miss work or not go. And like, there are things where you can see like the way that local funding goes into it, the way that the Tories have been fucking with it. They're trying to fuck up the National Health Service and make it private. But I'm just saying, man, having seen what it's like in a country like that's got so many problems, but just has that one thing right, you realize how, like, I just don't think that a significant number of Americans who would consider themselves true blue Democrats, the ones that we hear from on Twitter, the ones that we hear from like on MSNBC, those people are used to a completely rarefied world where they all lived in all white, wealthy suburbs. They all went to like fucking robotics camp and like Model UN camp. They got into great schools. They don't have student loan debt. They got jobs that had great healthcare. And I'm telling you, you could work at Bank of America and have to pay for not great healthcare, like pay a lot per month. But if you go and you work in like private equity, you go work at a hedge fund, or you go work at a tech company, like I know that Dropbox does this and I know a lot of other tech companies do, your healthcare is completely free. Like, you don't pay a premium. And you don't pay a premium for, you don't have a deductible. You don't have a deductible for your family either. It's completely free. Like, so the thing about it is, I think there are people in America who are like, here's what we need for policy. They just don't understand how fucking shitty things are. And I just feel like when we talk about half measures, when we talk about like, oh, what's going to pass muster in the swing states, like, it's not taking into consideration that the reason why the Democrats are always so tenuous in the face of potential wins is because they don't want to admit that this, starting with the half loaf kind of just complete compromise to the Republicans, has turned so many people off to politics, like that people just don't vote. But if you could tell them we're going to do this and it's going to be free, college is going to be free, healthcare is going to be free, like, it's just not going to cost you. I don't think they realized how much energy that would create behind it. And whether it's they're dumb, whether it's because they're princelings who've never had to, they don't know what it's like to be a working person in America, or whether they've been bought by the donor class, it doesn't matter, but like they're just not seeing the picture.
My favorite argument against free college, like at a state or community college level, is well, I don't want Donald Trump's kids to be able to go to college for free. Like, who the fuck cares? And also, Barron's
Yeah,
not
who
going
fucking
to.
gives a shit? And they're
Barron's
not going to go.
Yeah, Barron's not going to Forest Park Community College. I'm gonna tell you that right the fuck now, or whatever DC Community College is. Barron Trump is gonna go to the best whatever schools there are because his dad's got a lot of money and he's the president. Like I don't give a fuck. Like you should be able to knock out like a trade school or 2 years of generics or general stuff or whatever, and not pay out the ass for it or whatever. But that's again another just ridiculous liberal argument. And if you ever want to have real fun with liberals online, just say that you support Bernie Sanders for president. And I actually got unfollowed by a couple of people for saying that. Um, Apparently, saying that the most popular politician might do well in a presidential race is controversial in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing too is you and I were talking about this earlier about we've been seeing some of this in the news recently about women in charge of defense contractors and like, big defense oriented industries. And I feel like that idea that all is well or things are getting better because now all of the big defense companies have women CEOs, that's somehow progress, even though they make all their money off, off an economy oriented around spending endless amounts of money on the military and none on things that will improve people's lives. That to me is the same kind of weird, symbolic, incremental philosophy that leads to people saying that the same shitty policies, when communicated to you by by a woman or by a person of color or by a woman of color, that they're somehow better. And I understand the argument when it's made in good faith that representation matters, and I absolutely believe that. I absolutely believe that having there be people who aren't all like that aren't all straight white dudes from the upper middle class to upper classes of America, having people from diverse backgrounds across the board, that matters. But if it's the same politics, the same dumb bullshit, the same refusing to learn from mistakes, it's just now it's a black woman candidate instead of a white woman candidate, then guess what? Neither women candidates are going to win because Donald Trump's going to win again because he's just going to call her some fucking slur and it's going to make every, spite voting fucking angry dad in America vote for him instead. That's basically what happened.
Yeah, you want to you want to see some real terrible shit. Like if Kamala Harris gets the nomination, we're gonna see some real ugly shit come out of the White House. Like, and that's not like that's not why I think that we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that like if Kamala Harris gets the nomination, just be prepared to see some real racist stuff. I mean, we already had Representative Steve King basically like be like I'm a white nationalist and a white supremacist,
Yeah.
and then have to come out and just like no, I'm an American nationalist. Like that's not better, dude. That's not okay. Well, I mean, it's slightly better, but it's still not better. You're still a fucking obvious racist, and of course,
I was joking about it because Donald Trump, like with the whole Donald Trump family immigrant story, it sounds like a parody to be like, my ancestors came to this country with just the shirts on their back and their own homemade racism, and look where it got me today. But when you think about Donald Trump and his father making money in New York City housing, he absolutely did make his family fortune through racism. Like they were making racism in the garage in their home shop, and then it got them to this to the point where now they've done so well. There's like the American success story. They have a whole skyscraper devoted to racism. But I mean, that is absolutely what any Democratic candidate is up against. And it's also up against Republicans who believe that the law should be bent or broken if that stops anyone but Republicans from governing. I mean, you saw what happened with the Secretary of State spiking the election in Georgia to fuck over Stacey Abrams. You saw what happened in the way that Republicans are trying to, I don't believe they're succeeding, but they've been trying to fuck over the amendment that passed in Florida to reenfranchise felons. You can see in places like North Carolina, the absolute just hell world of Republican governance where they've passed laws to basically limit the governor's powers so that Democratic governors can't do anything. Same thing in Wisconsin. if you're not willing to look at, like, the end of your argument can't be like, well, that's just so wrong and hypocritical, and then just make a pouty face like on the fucking Daily Show. That's not enough. Like, if you're not willing to confront this and fight it with organization, fight it with protest, to fight it with organized action, then you're basically just ceding ground to these people. And I guess, like, if Kamala Harris gets with the program and supports policies and that I believe she actually believes in, well, that's different. But I just don't know if we're there yet. And I think the thing here is that you might see in the span of 2 years, you might actually see someone like Kamala Harris. I don't think so for Cory Booker, but just because having watched Cory Booker's career, I don't see that happening. But you might see someone like Kamala Harris actually getting with the program and seeing that you've got to, if you want to gain the support of the electorate in this day, you've got to espouse policies that we actually believe in.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll change. I mean, people learn, people grow, but the idea that we're going to be precluded from any criticism whatsoever because the woman who thinks Beto is going to make her come so hard her calves cramp is saying that, like, actually it's sexist to criticize Kamala Harris for anything. That's useless. That's useless to both to us and to women and to people of color, to anyone. That's just basically liberal scolding because they treat politics the way that, like, it's sort of, I would say sports teams, but they think they're above sport, so they treat it like it's the state championship for Model UN.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting 2019 leading into 2020, and one way or another, I'm sure I'm gonna be fucking pissed off, no matter who they choose. But we'll see. Like you said, yell at Kamala Harris enough and maybe she'll change. Like, Obama changed his mind about gay marriage, right? In like 2010 or something. Like, and whether he believed it or not, I don't care, because he changed his mind and he didn't do policies against, gay marriage, and then we got gay marriage. Like, which is, like, and that's the thing, like, it's,
I mean, sort of. We sort of got it by Supreme Court decision, but, like, they're going to try to fuck with that.
Right, but nothing, you didn't have an executive branch who was outright against it.
I agree with you that if you can shun some people to the point where they'll be less overt, I think that a genuine conversion takes a lot of work.
Well, and this is not to say, like, we're dealing with something like racism with Kamala Harris. Obviously, what I'm saying is something like going from ACA to Medicare for all. Be like, no, stop with your ACA bullshit. Medicare for all. That's what people want. And if you can be like, look, if you support these things, whether or not you think you can push them through, like, that's what I always hear that. Like, well, you don't want to push that because Medicare for all or universal health care or single payer. You don't want to push that because you don't have a Congress that will support it, and so therefore whatever you're trying to do, you're not going to win. So you should have more realistic goals. And I'm just like, I don't know if any of you have ever fucking haggled with anything in your entire life, but you do not start from a losing position. You not go in and be like, I'm going to lose this. You go in and say, I'm going to lose this high thing, so I'm just going to make it higher, and then talk them down to that. Like, that's literally what haggling is, and that's what anybody can do. So, starting at so if we want to have, if we shun people into, hey, free trade schools or free first 2 years of a community college that they're paid for by school. Community college isn't expensive, but you know what? It is still cost prohibitive for a lot of people. Medicare or medical, care for everybody. Hey, you know what? Yeah, it may take you all day to get something, but I mean, it's a step in the right direction. And that's what I'm saying. We need to keep walking across the fucking creek to get to the other side. We need to stop stopping in the middle of the fucking creek, because that's what we're doing. And that's what people like Kamala Harris wants to do. We want to stop because we want to go back to these policies that we used to have. We want to go back to these things the way that we used to do. We want the status quo again. And I'm telling you all now, right now, the status is not fucking quo anymore. We need to stop doing that. So if we can yell at these people to do that, then thumbs up. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, and something else I'd point out too is, so there was a headline that you shared with me earlier talking about how the military is looking at eliminating about 17,000 uniformed medical jobs. This was reported in military.com. And at the same time, you see terrible, like a huge scale up of the extent to which the military, or correction, the Department of Veterans Affairs is putting money into the private healthcare sector. you know for a fact from reporting that there's this weird cabal of Trump's golf buddies down at Mar-a-Lago who are basically dictating VA policy. There absolutely is energy on the right trying to destroy socialized medicine in America as it exists. They want to get rid of the Veterans Health Administration. They want to make sure that the military uses the private healthcare sector too, so that like the military, the nearing $1 trillion annual budget for the Pentagon also goes into pumping up the profits of the private healthcare sector. So if you think that if you can just achieve this state of equilibrium, like you were saying, Francis, go back to the old ways and that things are going to be fine, like that's absolutely not the case. There's a lot of energy, there's a lot of momentum on the part of socialists in America trying to canvass for Medicare for all, but there's also a significant amount of energy that's, if not genuine, then extraordinarily genuinely funded by the Koch brothers and others to try to convince people to destroy anything approaching Medicare for all, or just trying to destroy Medicare, trying to destroy Medicaid, trying to make it all private. So this isn't a time for half measures. This isn't a time for triangulating. And I think the problem is, just because something makes Ezra Klein or Nate Bronze all fucking hot under the collar doesn't mean that regular voters are going to care. Like, we make this joke and we make, ironic Twitter jokes and hyperbole and such about like, well, I can vote for the burn it all down fascist Götterdämmerung party, or I can vote for the we'll make your student loan payments 3% less each year party. And the kind of person who's sensible might vote for the sensible centrist technocrat neoliberal wonk party, but most people in America aren't that political. Most people aren't that dialed in. Most people aren't like they are on Twitter. And people are going to respond to something that excites them. You want to hope that the policies you can come up with, that you can get your party to support, you can get them to commit to, are going to motivate people to vote, get them out of that torpor of not voting, more so than the politics and the policies of overt racism and ethno-nationalism, fascism are exciting the chuds of America. Like, they've got momentum to make dudes dress up as fucking frogs and go to weird Nazi rallies. Like, you've got to have momentum to push people to support politics that are going to make their lives better. Because if they don't believe it, then we're going to wind up with just, I don't know, some wonk shit that doesn't even make sense on a fucking Vox explainer, much less to an average person.
Yeah, there was a an episode of Futurama where there's a presidential election, and the two candidates are John Jackson and Jack Johnson, and they're literally just clones of each other that are arguing back and forth about a titanium tax. And then fucking the head of Richard Nixon comes in and fucking wins as president of the world. And that's like literally Trump. That's, he just sweeps in and being like, hey, all these policies of nothing are really easy to steamroll over with my overt racism. And I didn't want to believe it. But people, I think a lot of Americans were very confused because they watch, warlords. Well, they probably don't. They probably don't know about, shit that happens in various countries in Africa or South America where there's, a coup every 10 years or so, or, political upheaval or anything like that. But, that can't happen here in America. And then like suddenly it happens, and then it's very confusing for a lot of people. So it as we learn, it can happen here. It did happen here, and yeah, the best thing you can do is organize. I mean, that's how anybody wins. And fascists are really good at organizing. Like, say what you will about their policies, man. They know how to win people over to their sides and really like get people to show up to meetings. And the Democratic Socialists do as well. I mean, there's been a huge groundswell, but for the most part, like, if you are anti-Nazi, you should be vocal about it, and not just on a like, well, of course I don't like the Nazis. I mean, go out, get involved, do stuff. I mean, if you listen to this podcast, I assume you do already. Like, it's at some kind of fucking level. But yeah, it's a very strange world we find ourselves in which we have stepped back progressively. Like, I mean, obviously things are better than they were in the last 100 years, but we take this big step back, and like the only thing that politicians want to do is just step forward. It's supposed to be one step back and two steps forward, and we're doing one back, and then we're just going to do one forward and then just stay again. And I really do hope that, through organization and through being vocal about these things, about policies that matter to us. Like, I get accused of purity politics constantly. Here's my purity: Medicare for all, aggressive climate change, dealing with climate change aggressively, and really that's it. You know what? I can put college on the back burner. I can put a lot of things on the back burner. But like, here's those two things. If you fucking support those two things vocally and have like plans that don't involve, and here's how we're going to work with the insurance companies and ExxonMobil. Like, no, fuck that. Like, actual have policies that will tear ExxonMobil down and we go to renewables one way or the other. Great. I'm with you 100%. I'll vote for you. But I don't get any of that. And then I get yelled at for not supporting Democrats. So I don't know.
I mean, my purity politics is that you can't be on the side of the cops. You can't be on the side of big business. You can't be on the side of fossil fuels. You can't be on the side of the prison industry. You can't be on the side of private healthcare. Like, I want state ownership. I want. There's an expression that I've heard kicked around in the UK a lot that I really think summarizes how I feel, which is it's private sufficiency, public luxury. Which is to say that you, as a private owner of things, have enough to have a good life. You have the things you need to live, but that the public goods for everyone are luxurious and well maintained. Like, I would rather have a relatively perfunctory outdoor space that belongs to me personally, but have an enormous park that's well tended that everyone can use across from me, as opposed to the opposite. Having a fucking like mat or like postage stamp style, a postage stamp sized park next to an enormous golf course owned by Trump that only Klansmen can use. Like, I want you, a politician, to be on the side of the public sector, of public ownership, of public sharing of resources, of public sharing of luxury. I don't want someone who's like, oh, well, it's we'll make sure everyone's taxes are lower and, that way everyone can be a millionaire someday. That's not the point. And so, to me at least, like, maybe that sounds similar to purity politics. Maybe somebody thinks that by being this way, I am dooming myself to never have a politician I support. But there are plenty of politicians I support, and there's also plenty of politicians who I would support if they just get their fucking shit together. And the writing's on the wall as to what's popular in America and what's popular in social democracies around the world. I want us to live in a society where no one goes hungry, no one is homeless, no one lacks for medical and dental care, no one lacks for educational opportunities, no one is unjustly imprisoned. No, if we can fucking figure a way out, no one is in prison at all. All these things, I can go into more detail however I need to. That's what I want to achieve. And the way that you do that has to start with drawing a hard line and saying, I'm not going to compromise with people who have a financial incentive for the bad thing to keep happening.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. I cannot find compromise with people whose entire livelihood and growth model is oriented around prolonging misery and making the bad thing continue longer. That's not how you win. That's not how you achieve whatever the compromise is that's satisfactory, that's going to actually solve the problem. And I mean, look at what's happening in Arkansas with, like, you have to spend 80 hours every 3 months either proving that you've been searching for a job or doing volunteer work, or you're not allowed to be on Medicaid. Like, every single person who signed their name on that policy should be put on a boat and sunk in the middle of the fucking ocean. It's just abusing the most vulnerable. But when you let these fucking ghouls dictate the terms of debate, then that's the kind of policy you get. The compromise is woke prison guards. The compromise is female defense CEOs making millions every year when they're fucking bombing Yemeni weddings. You can't let the debate be framed in such a way that what you settle on as a compromise position is just a continuation of the bad thing with, like, a pride sticker on the front of the bank that foreclosed you. Yep.
And that's, for every Pride Fest that has Bank of America show up in it, I know that a lot of people speak out about that because that's what it is. It's woke capitalism, and what it is, it's still capitalism, and it's still going to foreclose you. It's still going to put you out on the streets. It's still going to tell you that we can only stabilize you and put you out of the hospital, and then send you a bill for $40,000. And then if you don't pay it off, we'll send it to a collections agency. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how like happy and great and wonderful these companies make you feel because they have a rainbow sticker on, because they know now that that's okay to do, because it's easier. It's like Nike with Colin Kaepernick, and everybody's saying we're going to boycott Nike, and Nike profit shares go up because of course the writing on the wall, or the progressiveness now is to support things like Colin Kaepernick and support those things. So what do these companies do except say, hey, give us your money because we're woke now? I mean, it also reminds me of somebody trying to crowdfund movie tickets for girls to go see the new Captain Marvel movie. Like, hey, look, now you too can be show that you're represented in these like fashy fucking Marvel comic universe in which everything capitulates to some form of capitalism or authoritarianism. Like, isn't that great, little girls? You too can be the CEO of Lockheed Martin. You too can rise through the ranks and be an utter fucking bastard just like your white male counterparts. Like, thumbs up, cool, I guess. Like, it to me, it kind of sends the wrong message.
There was a thing that I saw in New York that really blew my mind. It was right before I left, but I'll see if I can find the link and put it in the show notes. But you probably have heard this, and anyone who lives in New York has seen this, that there are tens of thousands of homeless families in New York. Something between, I think there was at one point, there were like 60,000 homeless families and something along the lines of 110,000 homeless children in New York City. And I think those 110,000 are just the numbers of children who are in public schools in New York City, but whose addresses are at shelters. So that's the level of housing crisis you have in a city like New York. Remember, New York, in the actual city of New York, is, I think, about 8 million people. So that's a pretty astronomical number and pretty astronomical percentage. And there was this feel-good story getting circulated around on Twitter and through the media, both through local media and also through national stuff, that there was a Girl Scout troop in New York City that was made up entirely of homeless girls. And to me, when I look at that, it's like there's an impulse to say, isn't this such a great thing? Wow, how cool. These homeless girls are still getting to be Girl Scouts just like anybody else. And no one seems able, it's as if like they've just painted the big obvious elephant in the room with disappearing paint, to be able to look at this and say, hold up, why in the fuck are there so many homeless children in New York City, in such a insanely wealthy city full of the wealthiest people on the planet, the richest city in the richest country in the history of humankind? And you're saying, oh, well, let's not talk about why these girls are homeless and how to get them out of, and their families out of homelessness. Let's just talk about this great fucking Humans of New York snapshot moment of, isn't it cool that the homeless girls get to be Girl Scouts too? It's just fucking disgusting to me. It's insane to me. And that, I think, is the problem, that if you look at these Band-Aid solutions and you say, wow, this is really great. Like, this is such a nice, cute thing. This warms my heart when I go to my job, building cruise missiles. It makes you feel as though nothing needs to be done because goodness is going to prevail. And the thing about it is that goodness doesn't prevail. Throughout human history, lots of instances exist of goodness absolutely not prevailing in any capacity. So how do you confront that? Do you just hope that there's going to be some kind of savior moment that requires zero effort on your part and on anyone else's part? Or do you organize to solve it yourself? And maybe that's purity politics. I don't know. You take your pick. Do you want heartwarming photos of homeless Girl Scout troops, or do you want no homeless children in America?
Yep, I think that's a good place to really leave it. I think that reminds me also of anytime you see one of those stories of like this person walks 26 miles a day to and from work, and there's like, and their coworkers bought him a car. How nice is that? It's like, why doesn't that guy have like decent public transportation to get there?
I was gonna say, why isn't there a fucking bus?
Right.
That's all we're asking for, is a bus that works, that's reliable.
This kid mowed lawns to afford books for school. Like, that's so heartwarming. Like, no, it's not. It's horrible. That kid should be playing. He's 8. Let him go fucking run around and do fun, cool stuff, and not like work.
Yeah,
so
he shouldn't have to buy books. Like, he shouldn't have to buy books or raise money for his own college education or raise money for his parents' cancer treatment, because we've seen all of these.
Mm-hmm. And I think, and the thing is that I see a lot more now, like when I see that shit on Twitter or I see, people talk about that, and I see there's always a lot more like take people take the thought to the next level where they're not just like, oh, that's so nice, how good of that person. Like they're just, it goes from that's really cool that they're doing that. How do we make it so that they don't have to do that though? And I do start seeing that line of thought a little bit more now. I see people, saying that these things are not right. Now, whether or not the organization is coming or anything like that, I don't know. But this is just a step. It's a step when you start getting people to kind of wake up to those things and say, "Oh, wow, this is really bad. This is not a way that a proper and just society should operate." So, fingers crossed that 2020, we can all yell at the Democratic, whoever gets the Democratic nomination to support something decent and good, because otherwise Ocasio-Cortez is going to come fucking roaring up your ass and upturn everything, which
Hell yeah.
fucking hell yeah, do it. Like I think I saw somebody, after the whole the Democrats are trying to rein in Ocasio-Cortez, I saw somebody say, I'm sorry, you're trying to rein in a Latina woman from the Bronx. I don't think you know what the fuck you are doing. So,
hey man, I mean, like if that's purity politics, then we are absolutely the purity politics podcast. We are the podcast that is the purest, and we deserve scold from every Clara Jeffrey on this planet telling us we're unrealistic while she takes home a 6-figure salary and pays her interns in pizza. Like, I'm sorry, man, but like if that's purity politics, if that's being unrealistic, then like give me the gold medal in unrealism. Do it now.
Somebody did one of those like, oh, so you only agree with a politician 80% of the time, so you won't vote for him. It's like, holy shit, which politician do I agree with 80% of the time? Like, find me that guy. Like Carter, Lee Carter, maybe in Virginia, who I love to death, or Ocasio-Cortez, sure. I'm sure there's other ones out there. I'm sure there's a lot of other Democratic socialists. Those are just the two that are on my radar constantly because I follow both of them on Twitter. But find me that 80%, man. Find it for me, and I'll fucking vote for it 100%.
Let's just assuming that the 20% isn't the 14 words because they're neo-Nazis.
Right?
Because there is, and
Let's
and
be
that's
honest,
a point too that I bet
Nazi socialism is socialism, Nate.
I mean, they are the same thing. And that's actually a point that I really want to address too. Is that because of the conversations I have with my wife, I'm made aware of a lot of things that I definitely wouldn't have noticed being a white dude from Indiana. But I think that one of the things that's really important is that when you look at the concept of like half measures and you look at the concept of compromise positions, if people are made uncomfortable with discussions of race in American politics, if you say we want Medicare for all, but you're not looking at how do you also attend to the fact, how do you also remedy the fact that black women die at astronomically high rates compared to white women in America? How do you fix the fact that where black people live in America, both in cities in the North and also in the rural South, that both the access to, when I say access to, like the physical access to a physical location to get healthcare is so limited because of both underfunding and just the lack of development in those areas, or in urban areas where you might have a massively segregated city like New York, where 2 miles from a terrible hospital is a great hospital, but where people live and where people can go, they're limited in access. Or if you read somebody like Dr. Tressie McMillan Cottom, she wrote about basically being not listened to at the doctor over and over again until the point where she wound up, she had a premature birth and her daughter died. And the doctors basically said it was her fault for not knowing she was in labor when she was telling them over and over again, I think I'm in labor, and they just weren't listening to her. How do you attend to both giving Medicare for all and also finding a way to aggressively treat the fact that doctors, nurses, people don't listen to black people? Like, you have to do that. That's not divisive. That's not purity politics. That's not identity politics. That's stopping black people from dying. And so if you're not willing to talk about that, if that makes you uncomfortable, if you feel like that's being too divisive, then what you're basically saying is, I want Scandinavian-style socialism. I just don't mind if it's only for white people. And you've got to confront that.
Yeah, you got to keep in mind, too, the Scandinavians are putting immigrants on an island as well.
Yes,
So
I was going to say, because like when people say, "Oh, you want social democracy," it's like, go look at Denmark and see how they've managed to like do laser targeted racism in that country. Like, you don't want that.
yeah, it's and that is, as you said, the other 20%. It's like the Scandinavian socialism is like, this is great. Why are we putting all the Mexicans down on this tiny island down here? What are we doing, guys? What is this? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Look, I'm cool with the having socialized healthcare, but why don't we bring those people over here to give them a job or something? Don't put them on an island.
There's actually a law that they were trying to pass. I think they did pass in Denmark, where basically if you live in certain zip codes, which are only immigrant neighborhoods, the state can basically force you to make them to let them take your child away for a certain number of hours per week to make them learn about Danish things. Like, and it's just insane. It's like it only applies to certain zip codes, and every single one of those zip codes is majority ethnic. It's like, yep, that's definitely not the social democracy we want.
Yeah. All right, Nate. So what are we releasing this week for the bonus?
Yeah, so this week for the bonus, I have an interview with my friend Drew Pham, who's a writer, an Army veteran, spectacular writer, really smart dude, and we talk about his background as a Vietnamese American, the way that the Vietnam War affected his family, the fact that one side of the family was from the north of Vietnam and the other was from the south, how he writes about the veteran experience, how he writes about veteran representation, and the sort of what you might describe as the unbearable whiteness of veteran literature. And so it was a great conversation. We talked longer than I originally thought we were going to, and it went really well. And so I'm super excited to release this one.
Awesome. And so next week, like I said, I'm going to be on traveling. So next week's main episode is going to be the review of Trigger Warning by J.A. Johnstone. If you guys followed me tweeting pictures of the books, of the passages, good Lord, I hope that you didn't get the same brain cancer I did, but I read it fucking cover to cover, and boy, do I have some things to say about it. So tune in for that. Also, we'll be doing my, I'm going to be reviewing every episode of Generation Kill on HBO. One episode a month. After this one, it's going to be behind the paywall. But I'm going to give you the first one for free since there's a lot to talk about in that one. So tune in next week as well to just hear me talking to a microphone for a fucking hour. How great will that be?
Hell yeah.
All right, everybody. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter. Follow me at Army Strang. Follow Nate at In These Deserts. Follow the podcast at Hell of a Way. If you want to get on the newsletter, the pinned tweet on Hell of a Way has the sign-up link. We send out just kind of news updates. If we have any promo codes for Teespring going, we've got t-shirts that are for sale on Teespring. You can find those in our links as well. Please, if you're not a member of Patreon yet and you've been thinking about it, we are doing a lot more content. We've got more reviews coming out. I have a review on the series Fallout that will be coming out, the video game series with Trevor from No Cartridge and Brock Wilbur from multiple podcasts, but both video game nerds as well. So we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff, and hopefully I'm going to be doing some more stuff with those two, since Nate is not the gamer nerd who's probably kissing girls in high school, while the rest of us were playing Dungeons and Dragons or whatever.
I was swimming, but actually, you say that, and it's like I'm looking at my Steam app icon so I can play Civilization 4, or correction, Civilization 6 again.
I was going to say, you also did drop a pretty deep Castlevania reference as well. So.
Hell yeah.
So maybe Nate and I will do some video game stuff. I don't know what Nate plays. We'll get into that though. But a lot of good stuff. So you can find that at patreon.com/hellofawaytodie. If you have any questions, comments, we do have a YouTube as well. We're bringing that back. Hopefully, I'm going to be doing once a week videos with that. So if you want to listen to the podcast as well on YouTube rather than on a podcasting device, if it's easier for you to like at work put it onto YouTube, we're doing that as well. We will fucking beam this shit into your brains in whatever way you need. We will do it for you. So. We'll get links out for all of that. We'll put links to the YouTube in the show notes as well. So, but as always, thank you, everybody. And Nate, we'll talk to you next week.
Yep. Have a good one.
Zoom, zoom, zoom.